Hello everyone and welcome to our third live stream from my laundry room / work office. I hope that you all had a great and safe weekend and enjoyed some wonderful weather. We had some great stuff going on in our own place as well. So with any luck, this has transferred out. Oh, look, there we go. Now you can see my face and not just hear my voice. So perfect. Apparently it decided to play the sound but not move. Welcome one more time. It is live as always. So this is my beautiful laundry dungeon, which I've turned into my hobby hangout. I'm going to be continuing to paint Nebula, which we started last Tuesday. We're going to move on to the skin and try to knock the rest of this bad girl out so that we can get her on the table and start playing and stuff with our Nebula here really soon. So for those of you guys who missed how I did the purple leathers, some of the metallics, just go back and check out the Twitch channel or on our YouTube. If you look for Schick Home Stream number 2, you'll see how I approach kind of painting Nebula and getting to the point that we are now. So I'm going to move off of my fantastic laundry scene, my backdrop if you will, and we'll go right to our Nebula here. So you can see where we left off. The way we kind of approached this was we started with a Zenith Prime, which means that I sprayed her black, then I came in at a 45-degree angle, sprayed gray. You can still see kind of the shading that we have here on the head and stuff, which hasn't been painted. So this allowed me to use washes, which basically use that Zenith priming highlight to create natural darkened shadows. So like, for example, the black primer still shows in these little crevices here where the seams of her cloth are. And then obviously under here, because our white light comes in like that. As I apply the wash kind of stretches over everything in pools in certain spots. And it creates these natural highlights and shades. So the things that I want to do today is I'm going to hit her skin. So we're going to get the blue skin on. The two-tone blue, because we know, looking at our reference, that we have a darker blue stripe down the center of the face, and then we have lighter blue for the rest of the skin. So that's going to be the arm over here, the head, all of that. I want to come back in and I want to make these leathers pop a little bit more because they've just been base coated. And then my next thing is I'm going to take this pinkish metal and I'm going to tint it down with a little bit of purple wash. And we're going to get it a little bit more in line and a little less pink. And then if we have time, we'll try to do something fun on the shock sticks. I've been thinking about these a lot, her little shock batons. And I want to use some of the fluorescence and a couple other of the inks and stuff to see if we can't get some really cool blue glowy lightning effects going on those as well. But that'll be time dependent. So hopefully we can knock her out. And then if we have more time, we might move on to this little like crazy crashed spaceship engine thing that's going on. So when you apply a wash, since there's a couple questions in the chat about it, like the biggest thing is that you want the wash, it depends on what you're trying to do with the wash first. So if you're just using the wash to shade naturally, you want to make sure that the wash pools in the recesses and doesn't form puddles on the miniature itself. So what you're going to notice is as you start to wash, it's going to naturally, because it's thinner, and you thin it down with either medium or water or a little combination of both, you're going to see, and here we'll just start by washing this purple metallic or this pink metallic. So as I take that over, you're going to see that it's going to pool in certain spots, and that is what you want. You want the wash to pool in those crevices because that's what's going to give you your natural shading, but you also want to make sure that you're getting a little bit of that wash over all the surfaces. Especially when you're doing kind of like your first shade. And the reason that you want that is because the wash is going to act like a thin layer of paint. It's fairly translucent, but you can already see how it's shifting the color down. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of using this in between a wash and a glaze. And so a glaze is unlike a wash where you want it to pool in the recesses and you want it to be like barely visible on the high surfaces. So you get these nice areas of shadow here. And then like on the knee right here, you can see how it's still really poppy and pink. And then down here, again where it's pooling, it's gotten darker. So a wash is primarily used for shading. Now you can control the wash. So for example, I could come in here with my purple wash and I could say, well, I want to make this this line here between the leathers a little stronger. And I can very carefully apply the wash almost like a dark line. But because the paint is nice and runny and it wants to go into those crevices, it can really help out. So you can apply a wash very specifically and with a lot of great care to get some nice lining and some nice definition. And because that wash wants to run into those cracks and crevices, it makes it a lot easier than trying to draw that line on. And of course this only works if you're kind of following some of the natural areas and stuff. But let's say like right here, I want to just kind of like darken that up. So what I can do is I can apply the wash over the whole thing, and you can hopefully see a little bit how that wash is running into all the cracks and crevices on the sides, because that's where it can pool, and then it's naturally kind of pulling away from that center because that center is raised. So that's what you're looking for a wash. And the big thing is like sometimes when you apply a wash, let's see if we can do this. Sometimes when you apply a wash, what do I have? Be good for a wash. We'll just use this, it'll be fine. So when you apply a wash, you can get really big pools like that. So you can see how the wash is kind of pooling. If you let it dry, or you let it start to stick, that pool is going to be really dark, and then the rest of the place is going to kind of be like this, right? So you don't want that. So you want to make sure that when you get a pool, you use your brush to pull that pool away and to keep it so that it's kind of just tinting the surface. And you can see now how on this like textured concrete, how I've got these dark splotches here. Those are actually the natural like depressions that are happening in the concrete that's there to make it look like stone. And then the rest of it is kind of just being tinted. And so this is kind of like a more traditional shade wash where you're just pulling it over the whole surface. And you want to keep it nice and thin, and you just want to kind of pull it out, and you can feather it out too, and you get a lot of different effects. But that's what you're looking for a wash, right? You definitely don't want to like slather it on. It's certainly thin coats. You don't need a lot of it for sure. If you want to increase the level of shade, just do more coats. So this is like the thickest you really want that wash to be, is like a nice thin layer. Now when we're doing the pin washing, which is a little different, so like how I get this Nebula color, I'm not using quite as thin of a wash. I'm using paint that I've thinned down to wash consistency, because again, a wash isn't a specific type of paint. It's any paint, it's just a technique. So you can thin it down, and I'm just thinning it down less because I want more of that vibrancy of color. I'm not trying to shade anything. I'm just trying to get an overall color. So I don't want it to pull as much away from the center. And this depends on the kind of effect you're going for and stuff like that. And I could use a wash to shade this down, kind of like I did here. But that's kind of like the basics of using a wash. So you want to use a very controlled amount, and you want to make sure that you're pulling it across the entire surface. Let it pool in the recesses if you're doing a shade wash, because that's what you want. If you want more control, then don't feel like you have to put it over everything. Like a wash doesn't have to be slathered everywhere. It can be applied very specifically and deliberately to certain spots that you want to be darker or lighter. And a lot of the times if those places are in recesses, the wash is going to help you out a lot more. And then again, don't confuse a wash with a glaze. So washes kind of act like glazes, in that if you pull them over the entire surface, some of that wash is going to be left on the higher surface, so it is going to tint the color. But with a glaze, what you're looking for is you're really looking to have a thin, almost translucent membrane of paint. If you imagine taking cellophane and putting it over like a picture or a drawing, right? The idea behind the glaze is that it tints the entire surface. And it does this with a very thin application. And so you want to build those applications up. And the more layers of tint you lay down, the stronger that tint is going to be over the top of the stuff, over the top of whatever you're there. So this can be a really good way to paint super vibrant reds, where you basically, instead of trying to build red up layer by layer by layer, you can just take your reds, build up to like a salmon color, like almost a pinkish hue, like a pink yellow kind of hue, and then you can start layering layers of red glaze over the top of it. And what that will do is it will bring that salmon color back down, and it just kind of tints everything back to the red. So you get a really good bright red that's really rich. So the color that I used for the purple last week was this Scale 75 color, which is Sunset Purple. So we took the Sunset Purple, we turned it into a wash using some glazed medium from Vallejo and some water, and we just washed it over the entirety of her outfit. And so you can see like how I have my nice little spot highlights, my dark spots. And the Zenith Prime obviously helps with that. So that's how we got to this point in our thing. Alright, so I'm going to take, where's my violet? So I'm going to take some of the violet ink, and because I started on the metals, I'm just going to finish the metals. So I'm going to create a glaze using some of the violet ink and then a liberal amount of glazed medium. And this will probably be something I'll do throughout the course of our stream today because, again, with glazes, you have to be really, really thin with your applications. You don't want them to overpower the color. Like, we don't want to lose that metallosity that's down there for sure. So we're going to do really thin coats to start. Whoops. We're going to do really thin coats of this with glazed medium and water. And once I get this to the point that I'm kind of happy with it, I'll show you guys on my thumb kind of what we're looking for, but I want some more glazed medium in there. And I'd give you ratios, but this is kind of all by feel and kind of by look, and you just kind of know it when you see it. One of the things that I'll do is I'll test it on my palette. So I'll just run it over some of the white, and if it starts to look really good and glazy and kind of thin, I know that I'm there. So this is kind of where I'm looking for my glaze. So you can see how it's really thin, it's almost completely transparent, it's got a little opacity to it, and it just nicely like tints my thumb to make it look nice and bruised. And it gets in those cracks a little bit more like a wash will because it's runny, it wants to pool. But I'm getting a really even flow, right? If my finger was totally smooth, which obviously it's never going to be, it would be a nice, smooth, and even consistency. So that's what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to take my glaze and I'm going to start glazing all of my metals. Again, I don't want this to pool, so I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to watch it. Because it will want to do a little natural pooling. Adhesion and cohesion, which are our friends most of the time, also are going to work against us a little bit with these thinner paints. So I'm just going to pay attention to that. And you can see how that glaze has already, whoop, I'm off camera. You can't see it, but now you can. You can see how that glaze is already bringing down the pinkness. So if we look at this thigh pad over here, which hopefully you can see how immediately just one layer of this really thin glaze, and I'm losing some of that pinkness and I'm moving more towards a purple lavender, which is what I wanted to begin with. So again, it's just really thin coats, and depending on how this dries, I may come back and do a second or a third or even a fourth layer. Like when you're doing reds this way, it can be 15, 16, 17 layers. Get a hairdryer. It will help really speed up the process. But the last thing you want to do is get impatient and gloop it on really heavily because you're going to lose all those nice transitions and it's just going to not turn out the way that you want it to. So glazing is a patience game. It's definitely something you want to do slow, but if you do it right and you take a little bit of time on it, you're going to get really awesome results and you're going to be able to take colors and really control their final look. And like I said, it can be a really great technique for doing reds, obviously, and getting those really vibrant reds that are hard to blend up to and layer up to. It's an awesome technique I've found for doing like fire, because you can take like a bright yellow, and instead of blending up to yellow, which can be really hard, you can just glaze. So you take the yellow and then you take orange or red ink and you kind of glaze it. You glaze it down and you can obviously control where the glaze goes, and so you can kind of do some reverse shading and glazing and get a really nice vibrant color. But It's thin coats, and it's multiple applications of those coats to tint. I think the best way that, again, that I ever was kind of explained about was simply think about if you took a layer of colored cellophane and you put it over a picture, that's what you're doing here. You're just taking that layer of cellophane and you're putting it over your color, and you're tinting that color. Kind of like 3D glasses for those who ever had one of those 3D comics back in the day, where you'd get the red and the blue and then you'd wear them around and everyone would tell you your eyes get ruined if you wore them too much. I doubt that's true, but it definitely gave me a headache. So hopefully that's kind of like really clear now. As a before and after, you can see not only is it darker, obviously, but it's way more to the purple side. So we've taken that and we've really built it down, and we've done that nice thin layer. I'm just trying to get this little pool that's going on here right here to go away. There. Perfect. So I'm going to let that dry. I don't really have to worry about my glaze like drying out because it's super wet, and I can always add a little more water. So while that dries, I think we'll go in and we'll start doing the skin. So I went through a lot of the different blues trying to figure out like what kind of color I liked for Nebula's flesh. I landed on, I'm going to try this Adriatic blue, which is kind of like it's a bit more teal. It's definitely more teal, a little turquoisey. And so we're just going to give this a shot because looking at a lot of pictures of Nebula's skin and kind of how they treat it in comics, there's a lot of different hues that it has. But I wanted to go with something that I felt would like be pretty good against that purple without being too Eastery. So we're going to give this a try, and if it doesn't quite work out, well, we can always fix it later. Either by using a wash to kind of retint the color, or we can just paint over it. Thankfully she doesn't have a lot of skin, so I'm just going to thin out this color a little bit because I'm going to use the same kind of washing technique here. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah. So here's my wash, my blue pin wash. So you can see how that's a lot thicker, a lot darker. It's much less translucent than my glaze was. Whoop. I'm going to bring her back into frame, and we're just going to start painting this on. My only real concern here is just make sure that I don't hit that center patch if I can help it, because I want to keep those colors nice and separate if possible. And if I don't, that's okay too. So there. Now I've got a little bit of streakiness in that color, I'm sure you can see. That's okay. I'm going to go over and I'm going to do a second coat on it. I'm okay with that. I'm getting my brush wet here because I kind of went over on my metals, which I wasn't trying to do. Slather this blue over here. That. Make sure that paint's flowing nice. Careful over here. Alright, so there's the start of the face. So I want to get kind of down in here. Okay, so there's the start of our face, and I'm going to do the arm. One of the things that I found, which I thought was really interesting, and I don't quite know what to do with yet, is so Nebula has this bionic arm right here. But if you look at like all of the comics and stuff and the reference, the arm is bionic, but the hand is still skin colored, kind of like a reverse Terminator. And I really don't know if I'm gonna do that. Actually, it's kind of weird. I kept looking at it, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. How could she have like a flesh-colored hand but a robotic arm? I mean, I know she's a cyborg and all, but there does seem to be some consistency in rules to like her cybernetics being silver when they show and everything else. Alright, so we're going to hit... This hand is definitely a flesh color because our arm is flesh colored. Build that out. Okay, just hit under there. Come back to this head, which is not quite dried yet. We'll just play with these colors a little bit. This is another thing where you don't want to overwork the paint. I'm getting a little impatient because I know we don't have a lot of time, so you want to make sure that your first layers have dried completely before you move on to the next. And sometimes when I see that my paint got a little too heavy, I'm going to come back in and I'm just going to pull a little bit of it off with a little wet brush so that I can get those natural poppy highlights that I want, which will save me some work later. Alright, so that's the light blue, at least first coat done. We'll let it dry and come back to it if we need to. I'm pretty happy with that. Just going to pull a little bit off here. So we've got some pooling going on our metal mohawk that I don't want. Okay, so we've got that done. I'm going to do another layer of my glaze because it looks like my purple is pretty well dried. So again, this is just going to kind of be a slow but steady process because I'm still a little too pink on these. I definitely want to bring the pinkness down more to that purple lavendery kind of color. So again, just more thin coats of my really thin purple glaze. Hit that right here. Little purpley elbow pads that are going on that I did. I mean, I don't know if they're actually supposed to be purple metallic, but they looked like they were good candidates for it, so I just went with it. That. Get this thigh pad here that I always miss, because it's kind of hiding. There we go. Cool. All right. Number 2, let's go ahead and do some of the metallics. So I did a base coat on all of the metal areas with this black metal from Vallejo, or scale 75, not Vallejo. I didn't use any of the glaze for that. So now I've got to make a choice. I've got to decide. I'm going to use this. So I'm going to use this thrash metal, which is kind of more of a platinum, but I think it'll have a really cool, like, spacey feel, a little more cosmic action. So we're going to go in. Dallas approves of my blue skin. I've successfully avoided upsetting the master, so that's good. You definitely don't want to do that. All right, so for this, I'm just going to come in. I'm just going to do like kind of some layer dry brush style, like really light, go over the knuckles and just hit it up. So I have a lot more freedom over this. So I'm going to hit it back with a glaze or with a wash as well. Get in those dark spots, but I'm just trying to like hit those any raised areas, like the knuckles and everything. I'm just trying to bring up these metal areas a little bit. And I'm not going to worry about the ones on the head for right now because we're going to do some more skin painting, and I will remember what colors I use so I can always go back and hit those later because I'm not mixing. So I'm just using the edge of my brush to bring out some highlights, do some quick little like really feathering in a way, where I'm just kind of drawing these really sharp lines, which works really well for metals. Gives you kind of that metallic luster without really doing any of the work. So we're pretty happy with that. Let's come back in here. So really we just came in and we just kind of like popped out that arm. So you can see now it's got a little bit more spot, like a little more pop. That black metal is still in the crevices and stuff, giving us some shading, but we have a bit more of that going on. All right, looks like my skin is dried. So, pretty happy with where that wound up for the most part. So I don't know that I'm going to do too much of another like full coat. I think there's a couple little spots I just want to like hit, like I want to get a bit more down here. I'm just kind of playing with the wash now, so I put a little bit more on, and now I'm pulling it with a damp brush to just kind of push it around. So I'm just pushing wherever I want it to go. So I'm just kind of like, again, just controlling the paint with the wet brush because my wash is nice and loose. You know, like a wash should be. I can push it around, I can pull it back, I can use the brush to kind of control where and how that wash is being applied, so I can push it into corners to make it darker and leave something brighter. I can just pull it off by continuing to work the area, pull it down. All kinds of things that I can do with this working time here to kind of like blend things in and make it work nice. So, all right, so I'm pretty happy with that. I think we got a really nice like teal blue skin. So that's looking great. She almost looks like a murderous Easter bunny. So I'm going to go to my darker blue skin, which, find an open well. I'll use this one. Okay, so the color I'm going to try for this dark skin is this Aranirud blue. I don't know how to say this word. This blue, this Arathrorod blue, which has a little bit of a purple tint to it. So it's not a super lustrous blue, which I think will work out really well for what we want, because we're kind of looking for a tonal shift from that turquoisey teal. And then if it proves to be not quite right, we can either add some purple or some navy blue to it. But I think once we thin this stuff out into our wash, it's going to work out pretty nice. All right, let's find out. Hit this. And hopefully you can kind of see why this technique works so well with the Zenith Prime and the washing, because especially on this face, there's so much great detail and these sharp features that there's a lot of really great highlights and depressions and stuff for that wash to really do its magic and work. Side of that nose. So we obviously don't want it to be like pure white. We just want it to be a little bright. Of course, I can always go back through. Alright, there we go. So hopefully you kind of see that. I think that's very Nebula. We got the two tones, so we have that nice little turquoisey blue. We got the dark, kind of like off purple blue there. And there we go. One whole thing. So very happy with that. She's kind of got like a little mohawk thing that I didn't notice. So now the question is, do I want to even mess with it? Let's just test it. Let's test it, shall we? Yeah, I think it'll work. I think we can play this over and it'll look okay. Just kind of like that. Build it up. Let's kind of give it a little shift. This. I got too far over here, so we'll just push it. Because it's a wash, I've got plenty of working time on it, so I can give it a fix if I need to. The excess that winds up on that little mohawk thing. There we go, Nebula's face. Whoop. Centered on the screen and painted. I'm going to go back to my purple glaze one more time. Just going to use a little water to thin it back out. And we're just going to hit the stuff. CP30. What is even CP30? I don't think we've made that number yet. Dallas probably knows. He knows all the numbers. Perfect. Cool. All right, that's great. Let's do a little bit of highlighting on these straps. So I used African Shadow last time as my base color. And I didn't do any kind of washing with this. This was just a true base coat. And we're going to do the same thing now. So Take my African shadow, which is like this nice desaturated purple brown, and we're going to use, I think, a little bit of this Thar brown, which is like a nice eggshelly beige. It's got a little yellow in it, which is always great. And we're just going to mix ourselves a little highlight. So I'm just going to play a little bit. We're just going to play a little bit. CP84, I think we're beyond that actually in terms of our planning. Last I checked, we were almost at 100. 97 or something, I think, is the highest CP number I've assigned. Okay, here we go. So, come in with our little base color. Just going to pop out some really fine layer highlights, so I'm just kind of edging this a little bit. Just trying to like get this color to pop a little bit more. So do like the edges. Just places where I think like a little bit of zing would happen. Give it some volume. Pop. So I'm kind of just looking for raised places. I'm trying to stay close to the edges on this stuff. Working some like nice leathers. There's a lot of ways to do leather straps too. Layering obviously works well. You can just do a simple base coat and wash it down depending on your color. You can stipple it, which stippling is pretty fun to do. And I think Dal showed stippling on his Vision at one point, way back when we were still in the office, like forever ago. For the quarantines. So that video is definitely up on YouTube if you go find the one where he painted his Vision, which turned out really baller. But you can stipple leathers, which give them that cracked and kind of uneven appearance if you're going for like really old worn leather. But I'm really just looking for adding a bit of zing and volume to these otherwise flat straps. Just helping that eye read the fact that these things are raised off the surface of the miniature. They're closer to the eye, so obviously, like we've talked about several times, things that are brighter, the eye is going to assume are closer to it, and things that are darker, the eye is going to push away from itself, regardless of the truth of that statement. So even on a two-dimensional surface, and this is obviously how the 2D art wizards do it, if you make something darker, the eye is going to read it as further away. If you make something brighter, the eye is going to read it as closer. So, by kind of hitting these straps and getting where it should be closer, where it is closer, because this is a three-dimensional object, I'm helping the eye read that better. Because obviously your eye is really, really good, but it's not so great at 40 millimeters, you know. We're not designed to really look at stuff like this at this scale. So, a lot of miniatures painting is just a little bit of like illusion. It's being an illusionist and tricking the eye in order to help it out, so that it can understand the volume. It can see the volumes. It can see the depth and the detail and stuff that's already on the miniature, but that's kind of so small the eye struggles to really make sense of it. I think that's one of the really fun things about, you know, learning miniatures painting and getting better at it and stuff is it's really easy. It's really, really easy to start and to have good results because these miniatures are three-dimensional. So like all the hard work is done. Like you can see how it exists in space. You can hold that under a lamp. or shine a flashlight on it, and you can see right away where light naturally hits, where it doesn't. And you can just follow that as your guide, you know, and just you can trust in base coats and a little bit of dark lining to separate out details. And like a base coat by itself will look great, just with a little bit of separation. Just be clean and keep your areas really nice and smooth. And it will take you very far. But as you get better, or you kind of dive into it more, you start to learn all these little tricks. And you know, I think that's really what makes the art form. So if you practice and practice and think about it, and you want to get to that point, you can, you know, create really amazing OSL effects that look like somebody's just stuck a flashlight or an LED in the miniature itself. And that's when it becomes like this next level art form. Dallas did a piece in his spare time quite some time ago where he did reverse OSL because he wanted this magic torch effect where the light was being sucked in by the torch instead of given by the torch. And you'll see I made a mistake there and I just wiped it away with my thumb. You can totally do that. Keep your paint loose enough. Thumb is a great eraser. Just want to be careful you don't already have erased paint on your thumb, because that will obviously start finger painting for you. We don't want to finger paint. Well, you could, but we don't want to. But yeah, it's all about tricking the eye. It's all about knowing how shape and form and stuff work in art, and then applying it to the miniature, and the miniature is your guide. I think that's my favorite part, is that I don't work well on 2 dimensions, but in 3 dimensions I can kind of figure it out, and so it's a lot of fun for me to just like be able to express art. And I started by spraying things with a rattle can and doing some really sloppy lines and calling it good, and you know, 20 plus years later, 22 years later now, longer, you know, I've gotten better. I'm not the best, and I'm not trying to be the best. I'm just trying to improve my skills as I want to and have a lot of fun. So we brought out those leathers. The next step I would probably do is go back through and just do a little dark lining. But I think it'll be more fun if we do a little bit of fun experimenting on these shock batons. So we're just gonna dive in. Like, I don't know if this is gonna work, but we're gonna play. So I'm gonna use some of the fluorescence. So this is really white. So this is supposed to be a fluorescent white, but it actually is just a super, super metallic white. It's got a lot of sparkle to it. So I think this will give us some really nice pizzazz for our glow. I'm not going to do OSL. I'm just going to try something different because I want to play with these fluorescents. So we're going to explore together. So I'm going to take Brilli White. I'm going to use this as my white. And then I've got electric blue, because I think we should probably make the electricity blue. But if somebody has a different color that they think would be cool, we can do that. I used the purple actually on the Red Skull Cosmic Cube that I painted on my first home stream. And I really liked how it turned out. So I think we're going to hit this with the blue, and we're going to try the white. And we're going to use a little bit of probably the cyan ink as well, just to kind of mess with things. And we're going to see what we get. So I'm going to start, I think, by laying down some white. On these blades, just as kind of a thing, because now one of the things to note in having worked with these a bit is that the fluorescents are really, they're pretty translucent. So they are by no means opaque in any way. So you kind of have to learn how to work with them, and I'm still figuring it out. I've really liked kind of the experience that I've had with them, though. I've done a couple different things with them. I used them for some gemstones recently. I thought that turned out pretty nice. But you can just see like how that fluorescent white just pops. Like it is potent stuff, man. Which is pretty cool. So I want to make sure that I'm consistent. So I'm going to do the insides. So we're just going to pretend, not that I have a working engineering knowledge of how Nebula shock sticks work. We're just going to pretend that most of the glow is going to come from the insides here. Because this looks like it would be the interior of the blade, and then this looks like it would be kind of the housing. So I'm going to mostly focus on the inside, and then we'll play a little bit on the outside, and we'll just have fun. I mean, we're just gonna literally have a bit of fun and mess around with these fluorescents. And if it doesn't work, all is not lost. I can just go back through, recover up the metals, and make them more simple and stylistic, and it'll be fine. So that's all we got to do. All right. Pretty happy with that. So we've got our little pop going on. I'm going to do one more thicker. So basically what I'm doing is I'm using that translucency and I'm just doing multiple layers. So now I'm kind of just trying to make some hot spots in there that'll really be bright compared to this. Some darker spots. And then the goal being that'll give us a little bit of zenith play with this blue that we know is not going to be completely opaque. It's going to be kind of wash consistency, a little thin and stretchy. We'll play from there. So another way to kind of do gems is to just do a really, really bright steel and then wash over the top of them. Make sure that your wash pools near the bottom, like the bottom of the gem, and stretches over the top. All right. So here's our fluorescent blue. And it's real poppy, so let's see. You can see how well, maybe you can see on my thumb how very blue that is. So we're going to add just a touch of water to loosen it up. Be careful not to loosen it too much. And then we're just going to slap it on. And then we're going to come back in, and I'm just going to pull again and push it around because it's like nice and loose still. I'm just going to play with it a little bit so I don't have it too thick anywhere. What do you think? I think that's coming out pretty nice, right? I don't know how poppy it is on the camera, but like you can just, so that burly white is like really giving us that sheen at the bottom. And then we've got that blue on the top that's kind of running through there. And yeah, I'm liking this. I'm liking this quite a bit. So I'm just gonna come down here, a little bit. No one's really ever gonna see that side, but we'll just make sure that it's got paint on it at least. And I'm just kind of like pushing and pulling the paint around, playing with it a bit. Oh, let me get this one over here. Whoop! I'll get it back in camera so that you can enjoy this moment with me. Go too far? No, we didn't go too far. You were right. You were right. You were right. Trust yourself. That's the biggest thing with painting. Just trust yourself. Cool. All right, well, I'm liking that. It's pretty poppy and sweet. I'm going to come back in with my Burly White. And I'm going to mix in a little bit of that blue. We're going to just tint it a little bit. So I don't know if you can see this, but you see how I tinted it just a little bit with the blue? So it's still pretty white. And then I'm just going to come in. We're just going to kind of stipple some hot spots in there. So I don't want this to be like a line, or like, I want it to look kind of crackly and powerful. So I'm just kind of like stabbing it with the brush just a little bit because I want it to like push out. Come back over here and do a little bit of it on this side, although this side isn't as big of a deal because people won't really see it. I'm probably just going to come back in. I'm going to make an even less blue tinted Burly White. I'm just going to stab some hot spots back in. Just to get that kind of lightning effect going on. So what I did now is I just took the basic blue and I thinned it out quite a bit, and I'm just kind of like glazing basically over the steel that's still showing so that I can kind of get this little pseudo OSL effect as if the stuff was glowing. So it's just a little quick cheat. And because that Burly White is so bright compared to the metallics that I did, the thrash metal that I painted over it, even when I tint that stuff, it doesn't look like it's all one thing, because I have those unique differences in there. And so hopefully that looks real nice. I just want to come back in with a little bit more of that Burly White. I'm just going to try to draw on some very little crackle lines on these blades. This is the sound effect time. A little too much there. A little bit of a wet brush, we can just work it back down. There. That's pretty fun. I think that turned out pretty nice. So they definitely glint in the light, like that fluorescent just pops, and they look, the light hits them just right, they kind of look like they're lit up with energy and stuff. So very happy with that. We got the leathers done. I think I'm going to do a little bit of lining. So, I'm just going to use some of the Inktense black, and I'm going to make kind of a thin Nice thin lining ink. And this is really, I'm going to kind of just keep it more like pen ink is the idea here. Like if you're doing a quill and ink, so that it's pretty runny. Depending on how this fits, I might add a little bit of black to it. Just regular black paint. We'll see if it behaves. Yeah, that's pretty good. So you can see like my choice here. So I'm just trying to come in, help the eye out a little bit with some dark lining. So I'm just kind of lining the cracks in between the leathers. This is a totally optional stage, but it will really, like, dark lining is probably the simplest and most straightforward option to really take your paint job to the next level. Like even more so than highlighting. If you're really clean with your base coating and really smooth kind of with your color application so that your base coats are nice and solid and stuff, dark lining those different areas together to kind of give them separation will definitely be better than just highlighting without having those nice dark areas of separation, because this is really what allows the eye the ease of ability to pick out all those different areas. The nice thing about the ink is you can really play with it. Make sure they don't lose that color in between there. So you can kind of just turn it into more of a wash for those really tight areas. And you can do this with anything, you don't have to do it with ink. Really thin down like regular black paint works just as well. But it's amazing how quickly the details and the work that you did with the highlights and stuff come alive once you add those dark lines. And as an added bonus, because these characters are comic characters, if you're a little thicker with your dark lines, it actually works to your advantage sometimes, because it'll just look like the character's been drawn, which is what the eye kind of expects to see with characters like this anyway. So you can really have fun, practice, get better at it. You've got that nice little like bonus net of people just be like, oh, look at that cool comic book dark lining that you did. It's natural with the characters and all of that. So, you know, take those opportunities. Don't be afraid. Take the bravery test, as Mr. Bob Ross used to always say, because it's the only way you're going to learn is by kind of doing it. But there's a lot of really great freedom and flexibility, because these things are your art. So just because they don't look like the studios or your friends or mine or Dallas's, that's the point. I don't think that this hobby would be near as rewarding or as exciting if everybody's stuff looked like everybody else's stuff. Because if we wanted to do that, there are definitely a lot easier ways to have a really cool looking nebula that is like everybody else's nebula. But there's only one way that I'm aware of, no matter how you do it, to have a nebula that is just yours, no one else's. And I mean, you know, if you have a friend who paints for you, the same is still true. But I would really encourage you to try your hand at painting. Give yourself the freedom to learn a new skill and to have the chance to make your very own mark on this super cool universe. Because at the end of the day, that's what the game is all about. You know, telling your own stories with your friends, making your own memories with these characters. And obviously making a collection that you're proud of, but that is yours. And if you do that, you know, you'll get to watch yourself improve, which is amazing. I don't know anybody who doesn't like to look at something and be like, oh, I got better at this. Getting better at things is probably one of the best feelings ever. But it does come with an understanding that you're not going to start as the best ever. You're going to get to that point. And the only way you're going to get to that point is by stretching yourself a little bit, trying new things, learning from other people, teaching other people. Can't tell you how much just being with you guys and hanging out on these streams and stuff has improved my painting and just giving me license to try things and really experiment with my flow and the way I do things and all that stuff. You know, the painter I was even when we started doing these streams is not the painter that I am now. I think that's pretty awesome. Just watching myself get better, watching everyone out there continue to improve and do things that inspire me. I can't count the number of times I go on Facebook and I look at something and I'm like, man, that Ultron is awesome. That color scheme is great. There was a really inspired white red skull that showed up on the Facebooks not too long ago. You know, it was like, huh, look at that. I would have never in a million years thought put Red Skull in kind of like a white coat, kind of evoke that Russian campaign German uniform, but man, it looked really cool. So there's always things that you're going to learn and people that are going to inspire you, and you know, you don't have to be anybody's painter but your own, and that's the other really exciting thing. You're playing the game against yourself when it comes to the hobby. So you never have to feel like there's a race or that you have to catch anybody. It's just your own pace. Wherever you are is exactly where you're supposed to be. And maybe you decide, this is as far as I want to go. Like, I'm happy with what I'm doing. And that's awesome. As long as you love what you do for your hobby, that's the point of the hobby. But I promise you that eventually, maybe it'll be in 3 years, maybe it'll be longer than that, you'll either naturally just get better, because no matter how many times you repeat something, you just improve, or you'll get that drive or that inkling to try something new, and all of a sudden, you'll improve that way too. And when you struggle or you get frustrated, there's a whole group of people. There's a whole community of hobbyists out there who want nothing more than to share their skills and to get better by helping teach others and to learn from other people. Nobody owns the mantle. Alright. I think this nebula is pretty darn close to what I would consider done. I could probably spend the next 30 minutes dark lining, but that probably won't be the most exciting thing for everyone. And I was told that people have been kind of hungry to see something new. And it just so happens that our amazing postal service dropped something off today that Josh said I could show y'all. It's kind of a thing to let you know that despite kind of where we are right now with the waiting and the quarantines and stuff, we're still as hard as work as ever, and the second that, you know, we beat this thing together, we're going to have a lot of really cool stuff to look forward to and to immediately dive into and start playing with. So, some of you will be very excited. Some of you will complain because I'm not going to open it. But it is kind of neat. At least I think it's really neat to see these things exist and that, you know, they're not just myths and legends. And who knows? Maybe Josh, in his, like, softy heart, will break down and he'll throw something up on the social medias for y'all at some point in the next week or so, after I get a chance to crack this baby open. Now that I've said all this, and I'm just sitting here like, oh, I could dark line this forever. Just keep it going. They don't need to know. I just want to keep painting. The second that I'm done with this, I don't get to paint anymore. I gotta go back to work. The worst. Alright, well there you go. So that's where we took our nebula. I would pretty much call this girl done. As far as like she goes, we did a lot of great dark lining, which really brought her to life. There are a couple areas where I might go back and just touch some things up, like we missed a little bit of black here. And there's a couple other areas that I've noticed as I was going through that I was like, oh, I could fix this. I might do that, or I might just leave them because I don't think anyone's ever going to really notice when you consider that this is kind of how you're going to see her all the time. That those things happened. Skin turned out great. I definitely want to go back in and I'm going to touch up this metal a little bit here. And the last thing I'll probably do is I'll do a really thin black wash here so that we can pick out some more of this detailing. But I'm super happy with our experiment on the fluorescence and the metallics. I think those things just glow and they pop right when the light hits them, which is awesome. So a really great, I think, great new technique that I'm going to use for more of this stuff in the future for like something I want really poppy. The skin turned out awesome. Very happy with those colors. The purples, you can see how our glazing, if you go back to the start of the video, you can see how that glazing really brought that pink down and turned it into more of a purple. And I'm pretty happy with where that is. I don't think I want to go any further with that, because if I did, it would start to really mesh in. It would blend too much with the suit. I want to keep that metallic going on. So yeah, so I just have to finish the base and do a little bit of work on the head metallics just to pop them out a little bit. And I think she's going to be ready to hit the table the next time I can get a game in. So super awesome. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. I know, as I drag on, it's the worst. It's the worst. Okay, hold on. Hold on. I gotta reach. I gotta reach. And then I probably have to zoom out. So, well, maybe. Maybe I have to zoom out. I'm definitely gonna have to zoom out. Let's see. Yeah. We're gonna have to zoom. Okay, let's do that a little bit more. Oh, we're so close. We're so close. There we go. Oh, you can see the mess. Alright, so this came in the mail today. I'm not going to pick it up too much because I think I'm going to get too much glare. Whoop. Whoop. Let's try that. Alright, let's see if we can do this. Oh yeah, there's the glare. Oh, there we go. Ah. So this fancy sticker here tells us that this is a bulk sample. And what that means is that this is a sample of off the factory line. So we're going to check this out and we're going to make sure that everything's right and that everything's packed correctly. And then we're going to approve this puppy and it's going to go into full production. So, but it just showed up in the mail and there it is. So, it's so shiny though because it's still in the shrink wrap. But I can't solve that problem for you guys. So it does exist. It's very exciting. Look at that contents list. Woo! That's so huge. So there you go. So yeah, so who knows what you'll get from Josh on this. It's a very big box. For those of you who picked up the commercial truck, it's the same packaging size. It's actually, I think, a little taller or a little deeper. One of the two. But it's got everything in it. So there you go. So work proceeds. I'm very excited to crack into this thing and take a look at what's going on and make sure that it looks amazing and that we're ready to go. So there you go. So don't say that we never gave you anything. You got hot off the presses news. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming out and hanging out and painting with me today. I hope you guys had a lot of fun. I certainly always enjoy hanging out with you guys as well. It's also really exciting to get to look at myself on camera and just realize how long it's been since I had a haircut. But again, you guys stay safe. We have a lot of fun. We're going to continue to do these. Be sure to check Dallas's stream out on Thursdays. He streams from home and continues on his painting adventure and quest. If you guys have any questions for us or anything you want to see, be sure to hit us up on social media. You can hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those great places. Watch out for those as well. That's where we've been posting some of our spoilers as we move into things. And I know Josh has a lot of really cool stuff planned for the next couple of months. And of course, more information on where we are in the releases and all of that thing as the current global crisis continues and kind of moves forward. So we love seeing what you guys are doing, what you guys are painting. I think we have a pretty big surprise that'll be coming out for you guys to enjoy in your quarantines in the next week or so. Just got approved, and so I think Josh is finalizing the posting, so we'll figure out how we're going to do that. But we have some new game content coming for you, that's all I'll say. That will hopefully give you guys some more fun stuff to do at home as you continue to kind of like be safe, stay healthy, and obviously continue to reach out. We've really enjoyed seeing what you guys have done on the Facebook, showing off our own projects and all that stuff. So from my laundry hobby / dungeon, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys had fun. I definitely had a blast hanging out with you guys. And also watch out for more news on the social media painting challenge that we talked about. It's currently in a little bit of hang up due to some of the complications with where we are in the world right now. But we're working really furious on that, so we will be bringing that out as soon as we can to you guys. And we're hoping that it'll move through really quick. So from the Laundro Dungeon, I'm Will. Thank you for joining me. Be sure to check Dallas out on Thursday, 1 p.m. Pacific, on our Twitch station, and come back on Tuesday to join me again as I paint or build something. I don't know what yet, because we finished a Nebula. So thank you so much, guys. Enjoy y'all. Be safe, and have a great afternoon.